Yep. I met John one misty, still winter's morning in the south of England. I was 21, he was 54. We only spent a week together, but we spent most of that week, one way or another, in each other's arms. The first thing I noticed about John was his body. It was incredible in every sense of that word. He was big, strong, epically strong. His physique was perfectly muscled, as if he might have been chiselled out of Italian marble by Michelangelo. And he was tall. Though tall is perhaps not the word we should use for somebody who I never saw during that week's stand-up. John had spent his 54 years in a wheelchair. He'd been born with cerebral palsy and had lived his entire life with chronic, constant spasms. So his chiselled physique was not due to spending the time in the gym, but due to nature. Those spasms affected his throat and his jaw and his tongue. So while he could speak, it was almost impossible to understand him. It took intense focus and concentration. He'd been born during World War II, at a time when English society regarded a grizzled, gnarled body as synonymous with a feeble mind. And John had spent his entire life in a mental institution, placed there as a child. I met John at Crab Hill House, a holiday centre for disabled people in the south of England. A place where they could come for a week's holiday, give themselves a break and their regular carers a break. I was working there as a residential carer and I'd been assigned as John's carer for that week. I became for him his body for that week, his arms and his legs, doing for him all of the things that he couldn't do for himself. Getting him in and out of bed and on and off the toilet and wiping his bum and feeding him and brushing his teeth and showering him and taking him on excursions. And from the moment we met, there was an instant rapport. We got along like a house on fire. Part of that reason, I think, was because I dedicated myself to learning to understand his speech, and in doing that, I was afforded a glimpse behind the prison bars that were his body, and saw this incredible mind, heart and soul. John was anything but feeble-minded. He was fiercely, fiercely intelligent and a wicked sense of humour, which I learnt the day we went on outing to Brighton Pier. John and I were sitting on Brighton Pier, John in his wheelchair, me on a bench. And John waited till there was a sufficient number of tourists on the pier. And then he turned to me and he said, "Watch this." He took his big grizzly paw and he put it on the start of his wheelchair, his electric wheelchair, and he accelerated, first slowly and then with increasing speed, straight towards these tourists. And as he did, he started what he called his spastic act. And the tourists turn around and see this poor disabled man in a wheelchair careening out of control towards them, and they don't know what to do. They're torn between minds. Do we try and stop him? Do we leap out of the way? And those who leapt out of the way soon realise that they've left him a clear path between them and the end of the pier. And I don't know how many of you have been to Brighton, but the end of Brighton Pier awaits the English Channel. And John is careening towards the end of the pier with ever-increasing speed. And some of the tourists realise what's happening and start sprinting behind him, see if they can grab him before he hauls off the end of the pier. But they don't know John spent 50 years in an electric wheelchair. He could drive that damn thing like Michael Schumacher. 2 metres from the end of the pier, suddenly he slams on the brakes and does a right turn and skids to a halt a metre from the end of the pier, roaring with laughter. having terrorised these tourists, he'd obviously deserved lunch. He'd earned himself a lunch. And we went and had fish and chips. And he ordered the fish and chips, and the fish and chips came. And I could almost sense that something else was coming. And again, the big left arm comes out. I like that. And he's never quite able to get his hand around to his wallet. To which the owner, of course, says, "It's all right, mate. They're on the house. You enjoy them fish and chips. They're on there." And he walks away, and John turns to me and said, "Who says there's no such thing as a free lunch?" John handled his challenges with everyday life with incredible grace and equanimity, for the most part at least. But there was one thing that I knew that he was terrified of, and that was swimming. Having grown up in a mental institution, he'd never been swimming. So every afternoon when I would take guests swimming in the little hydrotherapy pool, John would always be on pool deck watching. And every day I'd say, "John, do you want to come for a swim?" And every day he'd have a really pathetic excuse. "Got to go and take my medicine." Might be allergic to chlorine. Need to charge the battery on my electric wheelchair. Oh, the one that was charging all night. It wasn't until the 7th day of the holiday, the last half hour, that John was a notable absentee from the pool deck. And I turned from the water to see the swing doors opening slowly and the wheels of his electric wheelchair just nudging their way through. John wearing only a pair of swimming trunks and a grin like a Cheshire cat. And I knew at this point, John's going to take the plunge. John comes over to the hoist, and we take the straps and we put the straps around his back and under his legs and around his arms, and we tie him safely into the hoist, and I get into the water, and then we have one of the other carers raise the hoist and then swing him out over the water like some construction crane, bearing not a load of steel girders but some more precious human cargo. I'm in the water, and then he's lowered down into my arms, and I cradle him as he enters the water. For the first time, experience the equilibrium of weightlessness. Just hold him as he gets used to that new sensation. And then we slip the hoist straps from his body, and I take him firmly in my arms and walk him out into the middle of the pool. And as I see him getting used to this sensation, I say, "John, do you want to go under?" "I'll drown, Ben, I'll drown." "No, John, I won't let you drown. I'll hold you. Do you want to go under?" "Okay, just one thing. When we go under, you just keep your mouth closed, okay? 3, 2, 1. Under we go. And in the weft and warp of my water vision, I see flopping out of John's mouth the polyp of an air bubble. And momentarily forgetting where he is and who he is, John drinks in the pool. And I burst as clear of the surface, him coughing and spluttering, me coughing and spluttering. Bit of a disaster, but I look at his face. And I see in that face a huge grin. It's no longer the face of a 54-year-old man with cerebral palsy. It's the face of a 4-year-old boy, born again, born free of deficit, free of hindrance. And from that face comes a sound. It's a primal sound. It's part human, it's part animal. It's somehow neither, yet somehow grander than both. It's a triumphant roar. It's a joyous squeal. It's a grieving ululation. It's the pent-up cry of 54 years, and it echoes right out over the pool deck. And when the echo subsides, John looks up to me and very quietly says to me, "I'm swimming, Ben. I'm swimming." And I look at his eyes, and rolling down his face is not just chlorine water, but tears. When I got the call later that year that John had died, it was that moment that I thought of. The moment that gentle warrior allowed me to take his life in my hands and walk him out into water's embrace. Two big men in a tiny swimming pool, clinging each to the other to free him for those precious, precious few moments from the body that for 54 years had stranded him.